В данный момент времени приготовьте ладони для того, чтобы громко и торжественно, с криками, улюлюканьем и рукоплесканиями встретить здесь, в самом центре Москвы, голливудскую звезду Колин Фаррелл, друзья! Ну что ж, Колин Фаррелл сегодня здесь вместе с нами. И позволю себе... Вновь прибывшим корреспондентам я сообщаю о том, что мы не фотографируем здесь. Будьте любезны, помните об этом, спасибо большое. Ну и первый вопрос, касающийся фильма «Вспомнить Всё», позволю себе задать вот какого рода. Коль, видели ли фильм Шварцнеггер? Прислал ли он вам какую-нибудь смс-ку или, может быть, лично сказал свое мнение о том?
No, I haven't heard the word from Yeah, I'm sure he's got bigger things to be dealing with in his life. Don't worry about me and my version of this film. But I called him, I wrote to him, I sent him a pigeon. No response.
Ты на чем стоишь? На микрофоне?
Хорошо. А сколько раз вы сами посмотрели фильм «Вспомнить всё», тот первый, перед тем, как приступить к съемкам ремейка?
About 4 or 5 times. About 4 or 5 times. Yeah, I'd say I saw it the first time when I was maybe 15 or so. And then, yeah, about 4 or 5 times subsequent. I mean, I love the original. I was a fan of the original, so I was a little bit skeptical when I heard we were remaking it. But the script that we did it felt different enough. I was alright.
Но все-таки сделали.
I did it. I'm guilty. Yes, I did. Because no, I read the script, our own, and I just, it seemed to be significantly different from the original that I felt I could do it and that we wouldn't be repeating ourselves.
Ну, на самом деле, я хочу сказать одно, что всем присутствующим здесь в кино очень понравилось. Мы только что до вашего прихода сюда об этом поговорили. Ну и переходим непосредственно к вопросам о фильме и, может быть, еще чем-то другом. Кто будет первым задавать вопрос? Прошу, помогите мне в руках. Скорее. Вот мужчина с отличной прической. Ага.
Добрый день, Александр Гагинский, мир фантазии. Колин, в фильме «Вспомнить всё», это, во-первых, научно-фантастический фильм, и у меня очень хорошо показан мир будущего. Очень много различных технологий, таких как лифт сквозь центр Земли, телефон в ладони и все такое. Насколько все это научно, и как вы думаете, что это может воплотиться в реальности в будущем?
Dr. Farrel says that advancements. I'm not very technologically adept. I'm technologically minded. I can just about get my emails, and send texts, and that's about it really. But I know that fairly much any element of technology that is presented in the film, whether it be the maglev hover car systems or the cellular technology that's embedded into the hand, all that stuff exists. It might not be for sale now, it might be a prototype version, still in experimental stages, but it would be hard to imagine something, in the way of some kind of technological gadgetry that hasn't already been invented. And a lot of the stuff in the film, Len Wiseman himself created, and if he probably knew that a lot of the stuff might have been created 10 or 20 or 30 years ago, he might have been disappointed in his own kind of genius. But he literally did come up with a lot of the ideas himself, including the China Fall.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Кто будет следующий? Мне, кстати, холодильник там понравился, который был в этом кино. Кто будет следующим с этой стороны? Да или нет? Кто? Ага, Игорь. Пока Игорь бежит, вот есть девушка, давайте.
Надежда Маркалова, Cinefx магазин. The action is pretty intense in this movie. What was the hardest thing to shoot? And could you share with us your experience with working with special effects?
Sure. The hardest thing to shoot was, the action was it was a 5-month shoot, about 5 months, and it was about 3 or 4 months preparation for it. But so it was fairly physical. I spent maybe a week talking. If 5 months, and the rest of it just running, jumping, throwing punches, getting hit, shooting guns, and all that kind of stuff. So, but I enjoyed it. It was real, you know, it was boys with toys stuff. It was, you know, it's nice to mix up genres as an actor, to do dramatic films or comedic films or horrors. And this was fairly much straight out action. But the hardest scene was the piano. I played piano in the film for 15 seconds, and that caused me more stress than anything, because I don't play piano. I've been running for 36 years, and I've been, you know, walking for 36 years, and I've been out of breath for 36 years, and I've been in a couple of fights in my life, and I've shot guns on a gun range, but I've never played piano, so that was a bit that was tricky.
В 90-м году вышел оригинальный фильм, где главную роль исполнил Арнольд Шварцнеггер. Скажите, а вы были поклонником этого фильма или, быть может, даже мечтали исполнить его роль?
Не было этого человека здесь, но, может быть, пропустим этот, давайте, вопрос. Просто скажите, насколько были ли вы фанатом Шварценеггера?
I'll answer the gentleman's question. No, I did like that film. When I saw it first, I was probably, like I said, 15 years of age. It was out, what, 1990, so I was 14 when it came out. But I would have been too young to see it in the cinema because it was quite violent. So I would have seen it on VHS in my house when I was 15 or 16. And I never had thoughts of, you know, if you had told me when I was 14 or 15, someday you're going to do that film, you're going to play that part, I would have thought you were crazy. But crazy things happen in life.
А были ли вы фанатом Арнольда?
Yeah, I grew up watching all those films. Yeah, very much so. I mean, I grew up watching Running Man, Commando, you know, all the Terminator films, this film. Yeah, I was a big fan of his work. I mean, Arnold was great, you know, and nobody would try and be foolish enough to emulate what he did. He had a very particular, very distinct style. It wasn't even acting, it was being Arnie, you know, it was a very, very particular thing. And it was, I mean, a really charismatic performer. Whatever about, you know, his accent, people say he wasn't a good actor, it's kind of irrelevant. He was such a charismatic performer, and in those action films that I mentioned, and other ones, Red Heat with James Belushi, and, you know, he was incredibly entertaining to watch, Arnie. So, yeah, I grew up watching that.
Колин, а были такие люди, которые после просмотра фильма приходили к нам и говорили, Колин, ты круче, чем Арнольд?
No. Yeah.
Хорошо, ладно, переходим к следующему вопросу, прошу.
Hello.
Вашими партнершами по фильму стали такие красавицы, как Бекинсел и Джесси Билл. Но эти девушки — выбор вашего героя. А читательных героев интересует, какие девушки нравятся вам, Колин Фаррелл.
I don't know. I'm not sure. I have no particular kind or type or style. I'm kind of an equal opportunity employer, I suppose. Thank you for clarifying. Thank you.
Хорошо, следующий. Молодой человек, прошу.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Дмитрий, КН.ру. Колин, каково быть вторым после Шварцнеггера? Я имею в виду второй раз переигрывать.
I mean, for me, it's doing the role the first time, you know, because as I said, I read the script and it felt like it was. I mean, once you hear that they're remaking Total Recall, and you go, really, remaking Total Recall? And then I read it and I liked it, and then after that, you kind of forget about the original. You know, you're just literally an actor going to work. You know, so you really do. I mean, there was a couple of elements in the original that. Part of me was kind of thinking, maybe we could have that in the remake, but the part of me that was thinking that was the 15-year-old that loved the original, so I had to kind of tell that guy and, you know, just engage with the remake as an original script, in a sense, as contradictory as that sounds, you know. So I forgot, once I got over the fact that the original, that the remake was something that I was going to invest myself in, then I forgot about the original. I forgot about Arnie and just went and did my job.
Спасибо. Who's next, как говорится? Прошу.
Ольга Белик, портал Киномарка. Здравствуйте.
Hello, Olga.
Thank you. Одной из самых интенсивных сцен в фильме – это ваша драка с Кейт Бекинсейл после того, как она вам стала не жена. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот как вообще вы дрались с женщиной, и не страшно ли вам было бить жену режиссера? Одно неверное движение и все.
I could slip with my hand.
Oh, sorry.
It was okay fight. I seem to look back at my work, and I've fought a lot of women in my films. I've hit like 7 or 8 or 9 women in my films, which I suppose is the place to keep it in front of the camera in a fictional setting. But it was fine. We choreographed it, you know, over and over and over again. We rehearsed. Kissing her was more difficult. Kissing the director's wife was tricky. Because when you're fighting in film, you're not fighting, you know, you're doing that kind of stuff. You know, you're missing each other by a foot. But when you're kissing, yeah, you can say it's acting, but you know, you're touching your lips with her lips, and so. Don't worry about that, I'm not going to demonstrate that one. So yeah, the kiss was a bit tricky. Len, the director, moved on very fast. Like, cut, got it, moving on, move on, move on. I didn't ask him, could I have one more? I think I can do it better. Thanks.
Спасибо за шикарный ответ. Следующий, мне кажется, здесь должен быть второй.
Добрый день, Марина Питерская, новости Питера. Колин, у меня к вам вот такой вопрос. В каком фильме вы бы хотели сняться? Жанр, может быть, какая-то есть определенная книга, в которой в экранизации вы хотели бы сняться? И второй вопрос. Есть ли у вас национальный герой, которого вы бы тоже хотели воплотить на экране? Спасибо.
Not really. I don't. I've never really. I've literally approached this whole acting thing over the last 12 to 15 years as kind of a leap of faith with regard to what's out there and what comes my way. So I haven't optioned any piece of literature to play a character in it. I haven't thought of any. I wasn't a huge fan of comic books growing up, so there's none of those characters that I'd like to play. I think I'm probably done with remakes now. I've done 2 in the last 3 years. So there's no character that springs to mind, and even that kind of extends to directors as well, because I've been asked what directors would you like to work with, and there's so many wonderful directors, including many that haven't been discovered yet, that have yet to make their first film. And I could pick a load of directors, but I don't really have an ambition that is, an ambition that's further on down the road than the present that I find myself in. You know, I've been very fortunate that at various times in the last 10 or 15 years, certain directors have come around and there's been an opportunity for me to attach myself to their material, whether it was Peter Weir or Terrence Malick or directors whose work that I loved in the past. But I didn't put it out there really in a way, just kind of fell before me very fortunately. As far as Irish characters go, I mean, I don't know, I seem to be aggressively attempting to embed myself in the present, and that's maybe why I haven't got an answer to a character of Irish antiquity or history that I would like to play, But I love working at home. I love working in Ireland, and in the last 5 years I've got to do 2 or 3 feature films at home, and it's always a gift when I get to go back home and get to work from Dublin. Thank you.
Спасибо вам. Кто следующий, прошу?
Здравствуйте. Селезнев Игорь, интернет-СМИ «Кинескоп». Колин, скажите, как вы знаете, наверное, фильм снят по роману Филиппа Дика, а читали ли вы какие-то другие произведения? И если да, то какие вам запомнились? Спасибо.
Just to Andrew's Dream of Electric Sheep, and this one, just the story that Blade Runner was based on, and we can remember who we both said this one. Oh, and Minority Report. Yeah, because it's the second time I've shot a film that's based on a Philip K. Dick story. This one being a short story, the other one being a novel. So yeah, just those pieces of work. I mean, he's an incredible writer from my limited understanding of his works based on, you know, reading 3 stories. He was an incredible writer. What he achieves in the story that gave birth to Total Recall, if you can remember Free Wholesale, what he achieves in about, it's a short story, it's 18 or 19, 20 pages, I think. What he achieves in that space is phenomenal in the capacity of bending reality and imbuing the reader with me as the reader with an inability to decide what was real and what was not. You know, it was incredible. I don't think either of the films have achieved the deep level of fractured reality that he achieves in the story. I think, I mean, that was very much his to do, and that was very much born of his particular ability. But yeah, I read a few of his pieces.
Прошу.
Добрый день, Любовь, I Famous Me. И у меня такой вопрос. Какой трюк вы исполнили от начала до конца без участия каскадеров?
Every single one in the film. All of them. No, it's a lie. Stop. I'm lying. Like Pinocchio. I think I fairly much did do probably about 90 or 95% of the stunts. But then a lot of them, my stunt double did and did them more beautifully and better and all that kind of stuff. Falling with Jessica, there's a scene in the film where myself and Melina, Jessica Biel's character, jump out of an elevator and fall about 4 or 5 stories. I'm not very good at heights, so that was kind of scary. I'm terrible at heights. This stage is making me very nervous.
А самая сложная сцена с точки зрения не высоты, а вообще ее воплощения, помимо лифта, помимо игры на пианино и, может быть, еще что-то. Допустим, не знаю, там, прыжок в машине или еще что-то.
To be honest, that piano scene was a really tricky one, and not just my inability and discomfort with the piano, and lack of familiarity with the piano, but sometimes on films, and the ones I've worked in anyway, over the years, there's usually at least 1 or 2 scenes in a film that feel like they don't want to be told. The scene literally feels like it has a life and it's going, nope, I don't want you to tell me. And sometimes those scenes, and they're the scenes that you would least expect it. They're scenes that somehow on the page seem really simple, and then you get to the set on the day and somehow it's not working. And that piano scene was one of those, not because of the piano, just emotionally. Wherever my character was, and he's dealing with a lot of information that he's had to open up to, and that he's trying to process, and Melina in that scene as well is trying to be very tactile, very gentle with it, but she's also exposing him to, she needs him to understand who he is fast, and so dynamically and dramatically that scene was really, we had a hard time with that scene that day, and I think it came out okay.
Вот так вот, какой чуткий оказывается. И эмоциональный, насколько фаза прошла.
Добрый день, Марина, теплицкая телекомпания «Волга». В одном из интервью, Колин, вы сказали, что вы удивлены теми гонорарами, которые вы получаете, что на самом деле вы не столь требовательны и вам не нужно так много денег. Скажите, пожалуйста, появились ли у вас новые привычки или новые траты в связи с популярностью? Может быть, вы благотворительностью занимаетесь?
Do I have new habits? Fuck, I forgot my Rolex. Would somebody see my 4th assistant and ask him to get my Rolex? No, I mean, I'm a very, very lucky young man. You know, I mean, I have, as far as material things and all that kind of stuff, I'm so fortunate. I mean, the most important stuff, of course, in all of our lives, family, health, relationships, the most important things I'm also very lucky in. But I didn't finish school. You know, I'm not an academically learned man. I received a formal education, but I didn't finish. You know, I left school when I was 16 before my final exams, and so you know, I'm grateful for everything that I have. I do a little bit of work with various charities that are close to my heart, particularly one regarding Angelman syndrome, which is a condition that my oldest son has. So I involved myself in that a little bit. You know, just kind of tend to find joy in stuff that doesn't really cost anything. You know, beautiful skyline of a new city, sunset, and the sound of rain hitting a roof of a building anywhere around the world. Seriously, you know, okay.
Кстати, про город в таком случае. Вы в Москве первый раз?
Yeah, it's such a quick visit. Only here for 2 nights. It's my first time here. I'm very, very happy to be here, man. Beautiful city. Yeah.
А что вообще можно сказать о России? Такой ли вы себе ее представляли, вот, скажем так, когда жили там, на том берегу океана?
I can't say I imagine Russia to be. I have no expectations. No expectations. It's very different. How? I don't know. I haven't got here yesterday. But everywhere is different, really. I grew up in Dublin. I know. I feel that there's probably some elements of similarity or connection between my people and the people of Russia. I know it's a very big, grand statement to make, but just with regard to your literary heritage and certain struggles you've had both internally and externally, and there seems to be quite a lyrical aspect of a tradition of oral storytelling as well, which is very important to both your people and the people of Ireland as well. So there seems to be some kind of textural similarity between both people, and I believe Russians like to drink a lot. I heard stories that Irish like to drink a lot as well.
Ну и то, что вы сейчас находитесь здесь, это говорит о том, что у нас произошли эти большие изменения, мы рады тому, что вышли на 5-е место по кассовым сборам на планете, но и надеемся, что ваш приезд тоже отразится на кассовых сборах и этого фильма тоже. Вот. Что касается наших следующих вопросов, кто будет следующий? Прошу.
Добрый день, Колин.
Вот здесь.
Здравствуйте, меня зовут Зоя, и мы собеседник. Скажите, пожалуйста, вот у вас такое говорящее название у фильма, а вы когда-нибудь страдали провалами в памяти? Вот со мной как-то случалось пару раз после большого какого-нибудь праздника.
Ирландского.
Ирландского, да. Скажите, что вы не забудете, возвращаясь в Москву, из Москвы?
Zoya, I lost years. Not just evenings or nights or hours, I lost years. I watched Miami Vice and I swear to God I couldn't remember a frame of that film. I was like, wow, look where we were. What would I take from Moscow? I mean, I don't know, it's early days. I had a really good sleep last night. No, I mean the first time seeing Red Square in the Kremlin is really, there are so many structures, so much architecture in this city itself that is incredibly iconic and recognizable around the world. I mean, there are images that have been broadcast from all 4 corners to all 4 corners. So seeing the Kremlin was a fairly significant moment, and hopefully tomorrow we do press all day today. And hopefully tomorrow I'll get the chance to go around and have a look at the city, have a closer look at some things. So tomorrow will be my day to get out and see a little bit of Moscow. So I'll probably do better answering that question about 5 or 6 o'clock tomorrow evening.
Как говорилось, просто Зоя, вам намечена встреча. Дальше.
Колин. Александр Фрамкин, афиша.ру. Были ли у вас какие-то сомнения, стоит ли вам браться за эту роль, и какая была основная причина, почему вы согласились?
I had doubts. Remakes never feel like a very original idea just by virtue of the actual name. A remake kind of doesn't sound too original, it's not. But, as I said, I'm reading the script, I had to just go, okay, there's more original stuff in this film, even though this film is a remake, than some of the original films I've done. So, a lot of times, artists revisit songs, and of course actors reinterpret plays through the decades and the centuries, and this was just a similar version, a cinematic version of that. So when I got over the initial remake, I'd already done a remake, a thing called Fright Night, and I thought 2 remakes is very uncool, 1 remake is uncool enough, but I liked the script. I really liked the script. I hadn't done action in 7 or 8 years. And I met the director and I saw the artwork of the world that Len was creating, that the story would exist within. And when I saw the artwork of the world that the film was going to look, that was kind of the thing that pushed me over into really wanting to be part of it. I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it would be a beautiful world where stories would happen.
Наверное, здесь вы уже задавали вопрос, прекрасная девушка в синем платье.
Здравствуйте, Виктория, cinemaempire.ru. Скажите, что было для вас самым сложным во время съемок? Спасибо.
The most difficult thing about shooting the film, I suppose, was just staying in shape. Boring answer, you know, staying in shape. It was really physical shoot. I mean, the whole film was, you know, it's not the most cerebral film I've done. It's not people sitting across a coffee table talking about, you know, philosophy and ideology. Which is not to say that there's not some certain philosophies in there. Of course there is, particularly as regards personality and identity and ego and history and memory and all that kind of stuff. But the hardest part is just staying fit for 5 months. What happens with film sometimes if you to get in a particular shape physically for a film, whether it's to be very thin or bigger or round or muscular, whatever it is you have time before the film usually starts, so you spend that time getting ready, you have a small diet, or you eat more, or you lift weights or whatever, and then once the film starts, you go, forget it. So if the film's 3 or 4 months, your body changes over 3 or 4 months. So the hardest thing for me was to, you know, do a 15-hour day and then go straight to the gym.
Спасибо огромное. У нас остаются считанные минуты до окончания пресс-конференции, поэтому давайте самые оригинальные вопросы. Кто считает, что...
Colin, hi again.
Hello.
У меня к вам вопрос. Когда вы целовали Кейт Бекинсейл, какие у вас были ощущения? Потому что вы целовали перед ее лицом, перед ее мужем.
Feel. What's like feel?
Да, и когда, может быть, он говорит, давай быстрее, давай лучше целуйся, чтобы было как можно меньше кадров, да, сделать.
What did I feel? Sympathy for her husband. I mean, you know, yeah. I mean, it was one of the more uncomfortable experiences I've had in 15 years of making films. It actually really was, because it's only a kiss. I mean, thank God it wasn't an R-rated film and we didn't have to get between the sheets, because that would have been very, very uncomfortable. I was surprised that Len, the director, didn't leave the set. He didn't have the decency to leave the set, you know, to give us a motions piece. But it was fine. It was really fine. It was quick. As you said, we did like 2 takes, and that was it. Thank you. Oh!
Пока Колин разбирает отличие, давайте следующий вопрос, прошу.
Пащенко Анастасия, журнал «Итоги». Расскажите, пожалуйста, о самых каких-то курьезных и забавных моментах со съемкой.
Следующий вопрос, да.
Oh, funny moments. Never good at this question. Never good at this question. Funny moments, man. The way I call someone. I don't know, I mean, you know, I can't think of any funny moments, man, you got me. Like, moments, funny, well then he said, and I fell, and I can't think of any funny moments, but you have fun, of course, you know, you do a film like this, and there's a lot of the stuff where we're on wires, the anti-gravity stuff where we're flying through the air. I mean, on that you're on wires, and it can get, because you're wearing a harness, in certain areas it can get kind of bunched up, and it can get quite uncomfortable, and so there was some laughter to be had those days. Sorry for the terrible answer. Hang my head in shame now.
Какой вопрос, таков ответ, так что все нормально, прошу.
Hi Colin, Dmitry Milyorov, KTMA Internet Journal. Could you imagine if tomorrow is the last day of our lives? What would you do?
If tomorrow was the last day of our lives? Well, when I finally stopped screaming and weeping, what did I do? I get on the first plane anyway. I mean, nothing against Moscow, but I got family elsewhere. So I'd get on the first plane, but I don't know, I wouldn't do much different, man, to be honest with you. And that's one of the clearest ways, I think, to indicate that I feel like I live a very fortunate life is that, you know, usually if I'm not working, I'm at home with my boys, or I'm having dinner with a couple of friends, or all very simple stuff that allows me to experience a certain level of contentment in my life. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't be like, I got a parachute, or I'm going to do drugs, or... No, I wouldn't. I'd just be, you know, I'd be around people that I love, I suppose, you know. To be honest.
Хорошо, прошу, с этой стороны, Игорь.
Hi, Colin.
Hey, Igor.
My name is Ivan.
Hey, man.
So, just ask you one question.
Yeah.
After the previous film, Arnold Schwartnegger, he went to politics. So, don't you want to?
No, not for me, man. Too many skeletons in the closet. No. Just, yeah, leave the politics to the politicians. There's loads of stuff you can do, I think, in the world around politics that maybe to be most effective has to lean on politics or use politics, but to be fully immersed in the world of politics, I think is to be, you know, there's quite a level of constraint. There's really quite a level of constraint, you know. To do the things that I would like to do in my life, which would be much more kind of passive and, you know, not for me. I'm sure they wouldn't have me anyway.
Спасибо. Завершающие вопросы. Денис, прошу.
My name is Natalia. I'd like to ask you if you would like to play in a comedy movie, because in Bruges it's not a comedy, it's a maybe dark comedy, I don't know. So would you like, because you're pretty talented this way?
Thank you. Thanks. I would like to, yeah. I mean, I kind of want to selfishly do everything, explore as many different styles of storytelling. I mean, that's what it all is. It's all just storytelling. It comes in different forms, different shapes, different genres, different clothing. You know, whether it's a horror film or it's a comedy. You know, each thing has at least one, if not more, essential kernels of truth that you can experience, even how us human beings deal with each other through seemingly the most, you know, superficial of films can have little bits and pieces to show us. So it's all storytelling. But yeah, I'd love to do comedy. I'd love to do more. I did a thing called Horrible Bosses, and I did a few days of that. That was kind of an out-and-out comedy. And in Bruges, you're right. In Bruges, it's very funny, but playing it, like, you know, I was suicidal, depressive the whole film, so it wasn't that uplifting. But yeah, maybe in the future. I did another film with the director of In Bruges, which is much more of a comedy than In Bruges, but yeah.
А вот я когда путешествовал и заехал в этот прекрасный городочек, почему-то все время вспоминал кадры этого фильма, да? Ага, вот та самая башенка, откуда упал там главный герой, там вот это самый лучший, как Колин Фаррелл, там вот это мостик. Так что спасибо вам за приятные эмоции, воспоминания. Я думаю, все, кто бывает в Риге, обязательно такие флешбеки из этого кино и всплывают. Ну что, давайте будем завершать пресс-конференцию. И один из заключительных вопросов. Кто? Прошу.
Здравствуйте, Колин. Марина Петрова, Инсайдер Ньюс. Вернусь к теме России. Вы играли русского заключенного. Удалось ли вам ознакомиться с историей данного трагического момента, или же это была импровизация?
А уточните, где играл заключенного?
Домой, домой.
I mean, I read as much material as I could find on the Gulag system as it pertained to that particular time in history, and I read a little bit about the idea of, you know, certain work camps and canals that were being built, and read about the climate in Siberia, and I read a little bit of Alexander Pushkin just to try and get my mouth around what is a very, very different sound dialectically than English as I speak it, which is a beautiful language, Russian. I I did my best with the little bit that I had, but I don't think that I've ever spoken a language that is so, even the little bit that I did is so instantly, felt so instantly evocative of a time and a place and a history and a people. And I say that with absolute ignorance of not knowing what time, what place, much about your history and much about your people, but speaking, the Russian sound in my mouth felt like a very complete experience, if that makes sense. But so I read all that I could. You know, I got my hands on as much material as I could, while also respecting that Valka was quite an ignorant man, and I say that without judgment. The character that I played, he was quite ignorant, he was quite naive, and he was a victim not of Russia or not of, but a victim just of society, of all societies. You know, he was somebody that had a very hard life, the character I played. So, you know, my way to him was I hope respectful and considerate of the society that he grew up within and the orphanage system that Valka grew up within, because I had an opportunity to write backstory. But it was also very much just about a broken human being. So, you know, there was that element that was very important for me to kind of look at as well. Somebody who had experienced in his whole life nothing but hardship after hardship after hardship, and was formed by adversity, and was formed by hardship. So I loved working on that film. I read the book, the original book, but my character wasn't in the book. He was the only character in the film that was created by Peter Weir as a dramatic construct.
Спасибо, Колин. Ну и вы сами напросились, учитывая, что мы находимся здесь в России, разговор ваш про русский язык, сегодня день премьеры этого кино. Будьте добры, скажите сейчас всем присутствующим здесь и в том числе в зале в октябре название фильма, в котором вы снимались, но на русском языке. Выглядит это приблизительно следующим образом. Вспомнить все.
Вспомнить все.